Hello, crafters, and welcome to Plan C, conversations about craft, creativity, and connection. I'm Michelle Brown, Creative Director from Picture to Page and Beyond.
And I'm Wendy Steward from Wendy's Way. We are delighted to be here for episode 2.
Episode 2, and we are here talking about art journaling today.
I know, and for a while we weren't sure whether we were going to be able to be in the studio together with everything that was happening in Melbourne. So we are deeply grateful we are here and ready to delve into the amazing world of art journaling.
Yes, so if you are watching us here live on Facebook, or you're watching a replay on Facebook or here on YouTube, pop in a comment, say hi. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments as well, and we'll do our very best to answer them as we go along, or of course go back and answer them later.
Absolutely. And we would like to thank everyone who watched episode 1, and especially those of you who watched on replay, because there was quite a few, and we loved your comments. Please pop in and say hello like Deb has. Hi Deb, hi from Michelle and myself. Thank you for joining us. Ask any questions, as Michelle said, and we will do our best to answer them during the show, or we will definitely go back when we're done and help you with all your answers. So, what is art journaling?
So yes, today we are putting on our mixed media art hats and talking about art journaling. So we're going to cover 3 things today, Wendy. We're going to talk about what is art journaling.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about the craft supplies you need to get started with art journaling. Yes. And then I'm going to run through my 5-step tip for getting started. So of course there's no real rules around art journaling, as I'm sure we'll say many times, but this is the approach that I like to teach, to just give us a couple of steps to get started, and then once you sort of master that, you can then decide how to branch off.
Absolutely. And I just want to say right from the get-go, like I've had many people say to me, oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming, you need so much stuff. No, you actually don't. You really basically need a piece of paper, whether it's watercolor paper or a piece of journal paper, or any paper really, it doesn't matter. Few supplies, and you can get going and create beautiful pieces of art. And as Michelle and I will say to you as the whole way through this episode, it's your journal, it's your creation. No one is coming to look at it. There is no art journal police. So you're good to go, and you don't need a permit to create free and willingly as much as your heart desires.
Yeah. So when we ask what is art journaling, really it is a branch of paper crafting. And so all the skills that you might already have with stamping or with scrapbooking or with card making, you can certainly bring into your art journaling. So art journaling is basically doing some work in a book or a journal. Now it may be one that you've made yourself,
yes,
maybe you made from a kit, absolutely, or one that you've already purchased complete. So it really doesn't matter, as Wendy said, what it's like. What you do need to think about is what you want to put in it, and then making sure you've got the right type of paper. Because like we said, no rules but guidelines. If you want to add lots of layers like we're going to talk about today, you need a robust paper. You don't want to start with something too thin.
Absolutely. And it really depends on your substrate and what you want to create. And I know there's a lot of people, Michelle, that, do one particular theme in an art journal. Like I know I have an art journal that's just, faces. I have another art journal that's just abstract. So I didn't set out to plan it that way. It just evolved. But I have an art journal that's just an eclectic mix and has all kinds of things in it. And maybe I'll get to show you a few pages later. But really, just get going. Just pick up a black pencil or a black pen and just start. It's the easiest way to start, I think.
Yeah, so there are quite a few different types of art journals, like we said. So if you're a writer, then you certainly might do a lot of writing, and you can write in art journaling, but again, you don't need to. It could be around themes. So like Wendy said, it could be based on colours. It could have no theme. It might have more painting and less drawing, yes, or stamping. So really how we make up what the layout might look like is really up to you and your own personal preference. So it really is just having that book, putting some bits and pieces together, and like Wendy said, and doing it for yourself. Because it's a book that we don't usually give away, it's something that we just do for ourselves, and it may be to help relax us, maybe for our own mental well-being, maybe to get out some frustration. And so, like I said, there's all sorts of different approaches to it, and it's really just not being overwhelmed, but just trying different things and see what works for you, see what your preferences are. And as I'm sure we'll mention many times today too, getting to know your own art supplies. So understanding the paints that you've got, understanding the inks, understanding the different mediums, and seeing what works.
And I think if you, as Michelle said, carrying on from that, it's really important that you know that. And swatching is really important. I didn't think it was important till last year when I really got into this. And if you don't know what each set of your paints are going to do, like your Dilutions paints might be a little more thinner than, say, some opaque paints or some older acrylic paints that you have, or you may have some that are, translucent. You really need to know what they're going to do. You don't need to have an end goal in plan, but you need to have some basic guidelines, some basic ideas as to what you want to create. And it doesn't matter what kind of journal. I know Michelle sells some great Eileen Hull dies that you can make your own journals if you don't have a journal. But, just get one to start with, play around with the pages, see what mediums take to your paper, what you need. Some of it might need a much more robust piece of paper, journal, as Michelle said. So you really need to know your products before you get going.
Yeah, and so hopefully we have answered that question to many of you. What is art journaling? It's basically paper crafting in a book that we do it for ourselves. So
basically, yeah, and last year was a great way to get out all the frustration of us being in lockdown and what was happening in the world. So no one has to see it. You can share your deepest, most personal thoughts in there. No one is ever going to see it unless you choose to share it, of course. But good way of getting it out, and getting some art play and get into your art stash and just splash some paint around. I think at the end of a stressful day, nothing better than splashing paint around everywhere, I say.
There certainly isn't. Okay, well, let's jump into what we need to get started.
Yes.
So we're going to jump over to the other camera.
Yes.
Keep our fingers crossed that the technology is going to work.
Keep your fingers crossed, everybody. We've had a few issues today.
We have, and our head of technology is not here.
Yes.
So we're going to jump over and see how we go.
Absolutely. So Michelle's going to walk over to the desk very carefully, not knocking anything over. And on the desk, you'll see she's got quite a few products there. So she's going to just in a moment start talking about her tips on how to get started with art journaling and share just what kind of supplies you might need to get started. So Michelle, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. So like we said, there's a whole heap of different sort of art journals. It could be something like a simple sketchbook that we've got that we can just use with our markers or for our drawings in. Now, for this, you wouldn't use if you wanted to put too many layers in it because it's really just made for drawing. But it's a chance to practice your faces. Like we said, practice with your colours. What do your different pencils look like? It could just be for doodling, for having a play. And really and this is one of the ones that we did last year, was just using stencils as well. So art journaling can be really simple and you don't need to use a lot of colours. If we wanted to sort of step it up a little bit, then there's a couple of options. Like we said, you can get a pre-made journal that may look like this, or you can get something like this, which is a junk journal kit. Now, a junk journal or a treasure book is one that we've made ourselves with a whole heap of different pieces of ephemera, and we've put them together in a range of different ways. And this is one that I'm sort of working on. You can see underneath here, you can see the text shining through the paint. And it's a chance to, like we said, bring all those paper crafting together. So doing some collage, some painting, and we'll jump into that in a minute. And then finally, like we said, a pre-purchase journal and something like a Delusions is specifically made for using mixed media. So it's got beautiful soft pages. It's fantastic. You may want to put gesso down as an undercoat or not, but it just is really thick and robust. And most things here, except perhaps for some of the sprays, will be thick enough to hold this without the book falling apart.
And Michelle, you've got a whole range of journals in the store, which we'll talk about later, I'm
sure.
So,
yes. So we've got a range of Delusions ones in different sizes. We've got the Scrap FX junk journal kits, and then we've got another range of the Strathmore visual journals as well. So this has a slightly different textured paper. Bit more texture to it.
And it really doesn't matter what size you start with. You could start big, you could start small. It makes no difference whatsoever as long as you're having a go.
I think if you're starting off and you're finding it overwhelming, then something sort of closer, particularly, I guess if you're a card maker, something more of an A6, A5 size would make sense. Whereas if you're a scrapbooker and you're used to the 12 by 12, then the larger format would help as well.
Yeah.
So what do we need for art journaling? We need an art journal, so whether it's a prepaid one or a kit. We might want to get started with some gesso, but again, not necessarily. If you don't already have it and you're not sure what you're going to do with it, don't bother just yet. What we do need, though, is a really good glue or gel medium. So something like this Crafters Workshop one, we know that it's matte because it tells us here, and also it dries really well, so our pages don't stick together. For those of you that might have ended up with Mod Podge in your collection, I suggest that's not good for art journaling.
No.
It takes quite a few days to dry and your pages will stick together and it just becomes sad for everybody. So we needed some journals, we need a good glue. And look, again, starting out, use a glue stick. The reason that we use the gel medium is as we add more layers, we know that that will give us a really good base and won't start to lift if it gets too damp. So we want to start with some gel medium. We want a range of paints. Now, whether they're acrylics, whether they're folk art, whether they're more of these specialised ones, so Delusions or Dina Wakley. we tend to follow a handful of people as well. So someone like Diane that does the Delusions range, she's got a full set of really bright colours. So we wanted some acrylic paints. And as Wendy said, we want to get to know our paints as well. So we'll talk about that when we get to the painting stage. We also then need some paintbrushes to go with our paints. You can finger paint as well as you want. We need some ink. Now, again, not too many rules, but some guidelines. If we're going to build up lots of layers, we need an ink that's waterproof so that we know once we stamp, if we put some more paint over the top, it's not going to run. So arrange like the archival inks. Now, whether you just do that in black or that comes in sets of cute little ones as well. So if you wanted some colours, that gives you a chance of collecting the colours and having a range that then suits the paints as well. Okay, so we need an art journal. We want some gel medium. We want some paints. We want some ink. If you've got any stencils on hand, that's a good way of adding texture. So this is a dark room door one. But again, whatever you've got on hand. And then we want some things to stick in it as well. So for our bottom layers, we want some ephemera. So that may be some of this gorgeous rice paper from Scrap FX, or it might be sheets out of a book. And for those of you that find that a bit scary, Mixed Media Art has some ephemera kits all pulled apart and ready to go as well, over 40 pieces in that kit. Then we need a focal point. So something with this Art by Marlene book. This has got a whole heap of pre-printed ones that are ready just for us to press out and stick in as part of our focal point. And so whether that's magazine images, whether that's a stamped image that you've stamped and then coloured in, or a greeting card, or some scrapbooking paper, just something that creates a focal point in our art journal.
And Michelle, just before you go on, that can be anything. It doesn't have to be archival because it's an art journal. It's not a scrapbook layout or anything like that. So we're not too worried about, whether it's acid-free or, going to last forever and a day. It's your art journal. So if you like it, it goes in.
Yeah, exactly. And a good gel medium will help seal that as well. So
for sure,
colour
for
over
sure.
time. And then finally, to finish off, if we've got some water-soluble mediums, so whether it's some crayons like Scribble Sticks or Neo Colour 2 or distressed crayons, and then some fine liners or markers as well to help us put those finishing touches on. So whether they're a nice colour set like this or a nice simple black pen or a gold pen, it really doesn't matter, just whatever you've got. And what we'll talk about when we get to that, we want to make sure our base is fully dry. Yeah. So Wendy, do we have any questions on what we need for
No, but I'm just
journal?
going to give a quick shout out to all these lovely people that are watching. Hi Julie, hi Donna, hi Katie, hi Diane, hi Corinne. Thank you for joining us. No questions so far, Michelle. Keep going.
Okay. So that's basically what we need. An art journal, some bits and pieces to put in it, and then building up those layers. So let's jump in and talk about my 5 steps for art journaling. So
wonderful.
Step number 1. Let me get some of these
make some space on your
way.
desk. And don't drop anything, Michelle.
Definitely don't drop anything.
Not.
And let's not get any mediums on electronic equipment. Okay, so we're going to start with a blank page. You can see that.
Wonderful. Yep, perfect, Michelle.
And our ephemera. Now, so those of you that have done my classes, you know that I like to keep things nice and simple and we don't want to overthink it. So this is our Crafters Workshop matte gel medium. And what I'm going to do, put a little bit on my finger, add it down here, and we just, again, don't want to overthink it. Get some ephemera, pop it down. Now, when we put it down, what we want to make sure we do so that it doesn't buckle is then start from the middle and work our way out. And by doing this, it applies an even layer of medium on both sides. And that tends to stop it wrinkling. Again, no rules, only guidelines. So if you want a bit of extra texture, you want to crumple something up, that's fine as well. So I like to have torn edges because then that just helps us feather the edges out and not make it look so rigid. But if you wanted something a bit more structured, that's fine too. So at this stage, we're not overthinking it. We just want to tear up some ephemera. So whether it's a dictionary page, whether it's an old reference book, an old kids book, an old recipe book, they often look nice because as you can start to see, we're getting different colours underneath, different fonts.
And Michelle, you did not gesso that page to start with. You
No,
just went straight. You went
exactly.
straight in.
This
Yeah,
wasn't gesso.
absolutely.
And again, because I know how my gel medium works, I know
Yes.
that this will help seal it as well.
Absolutely.
So that's another way of adding that layer. So again, this is the beautiful rice paper from Scrap Effects. This tears just as nicely. Take off those sharp edges.
And I think having the feathered edge, Michelle, gives a place for, you know, the paint or any art medium that you're putting on to really soak into each piece of paper and add to your spread.
Yeah, and it stops it looking quite so solid as well. So, but again, no rules, only guidelines. So if you want to cut yours up or run it through a die cutter, you can certainly do that. So I'm not going to quite cover all of it. I want to leave a bit of open space.
Okay.
Again, it really comes down to personal preference of how far you go. Because you can do a solid cover, you could just do a little bit, or you could decide to skip this altogether. Now, I know the question often comes up, well, why do this if you're just going to cover over it?
Understand.
Now, one of my big revelations with art journaling is when I looked at all the different ones online, you'd see all the beautiful layers, and I'd always think, why doesn't mine have the layers? And I realised, hold on to your hat, Wendy.
I
Do you realise that if you want layers in your art journaling, you need to put the layers in?
Shock horror.
I know.
I know, right?
So if you just do a little bit of paint, a stamp or two, and then off you go, you're not going to get the same depth as if you build the layers up. And so it does take a little bit of time. So that's also another suggestion, is that you work in more than one journal, because this is going to need time to dry. And so I do have one prepared earlier for our next steps, but this will really help you.
And I think it's really good to let it dry naturally, as you know, as much as you can. And yet you can take a heat gun to it, but you could end up with some lumpy, bumpy stuff, which if you want, that's fine. But I think just, as you say, work into your journals, let it dry, especially on this hot day in Melbourne. It's not going to take a long time to dry at all. So
exactly. And the other great thing about using your finger is you can kind of feel that you've got a fairly good layer there. Now I can see there's a few wrinkles there, so I'm just going to work that out a little bit more.
Okay.
And there we go. So there is step 1 number done. We've got some ephemera down. Okay, so let me just tidy up from that.
Yeah.
So any questions about that one, Wendy?
No, nothing. We've just had Margaret say hello from Sydney. So please feel free to ask any questions you have as we're going along. We're more than happy to answer them. And if we can't during our live, we will definitely go back and answer them when we're done. And we just want to thank you all once again for joining us. As you can see, it's really simple to get started. You can even use, you know, an old exercise book or an old composition book, anything that you have handy that can help you get started. So Michelle's just grabbing another journal, which she's done. Oh, we've just had Beryl hop on. Hi, Beryl. Thank you for joining us. So Michelle's got one she's prepared earlier, and here she comes.
So like we said, what we want to do is let that gel medium dry.
Yep.
And then we're ready to go. So this has been down off for about an hour or so. So now I'm going to choose some colours. Now I think we might work with... Go the purple, she says. Well, okay. So the colours I've got today is a nice bright pink, a bit of a tealy blue, an orange. Now when you're starting, you know, colour theory can be really challenging, but I suggest that we consider whether we're using warm colours, so reds, pinks, oranges, or cool colours. So for starting off, but because we use quite thin layers and we're not mixing them, it's okay to use some contrasting colours. We know that we'll be safe. We're not going to get in too much of a mess. Now I, again, usually a bit of an impatient journaler, so what I will do, and again, I know that these paints are translucent, so they're see-through, so it's okay for me to put them on here. I'm not going to completely block out the text underneath. Right, okay. And I also know that this paint is quite runny while it's warm, so I'm just going to put down tiny little spots to get started.
And as you have taught us all, less is more. Start with very tiny amounts, and you can always build up the layers.
Exactly. And then again, not overthinking it, thinking about those basic creative rules, you know, rules of 3. So let's sort of stick things in 3 colours. We also want to make sure we're going off over the edge, so we're not just sort of coming in too much.
Got you, yes.
Now we want to use a little bit of purple for Wendy. Oh my goodness.
I know the things you do for me, Michelle. Look at that. Look how fabulous that looks.
And also because I've already got a bit of pink in this brush, I'm not going to be too worried. I know it will help me blend it together.
I like that you didn't rinse your brush in between, so you could pick up the previous pink and just absolutely go in to blend those colours.
Yeah, so I'm going to set that brush aside and I'm going to grab another brush. Oh, looks like I've managed to get pink paint on the green. Now I think I've just got pink paint on the microphone.
Okay.
Sorry, Rob.
Good job. We'll clean it up after. Don't worry. Before our technical advisor comes back in.
Oh my goodness, our technical advisor is going to be...
Will not be impressed with us at all.
No. So again, just a little bit here, a little bit there.
And Kathy makes a lovely point. She said all business diaries are also great to use in art journaling. And we agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's nothing like getting ones from previous years when they're on
ripping
sale.
them up.
So
that colour's just taking so well to that page, Michelle.
yeah, and we can still see, hopefully you can see there a lot of the text underneath.
We can. On screen we can, yes.
How are we going for time?
We're going really well, thank you. Nearly 2:30. 2:26 we're
Nothing
at,
like watching someone paint, is it? So as you can see, I'm really not overthinking it.
It's great to see. Yeah, it's great to see your process, Michelle, and that you're not, spending too much time overthinking it, as we said, and just doing it.
No. Now, if you're really worried about getting paint on the other pages, what you can do is put a bit of scrap paper behind it, and then sort of come out over the edge.
Yeah. And I put baking paper usually behind it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because wax-proof paper, so nothing sticks. Especially when you're working in a couple of different journals at each time. You've got them all going. So
yeah. Now, because the green is a cool colour, I'm going to go straight into the blue as well, or the aqua-oceanly teal.
Now, Debbie's just asking, please, what is the name of the pink and green paint?
Okay, I'm
sorry, I can't see from here.
Not at all. So the pink one, this is the Delusions Bubblegum Pink.
Bubblegum Pink, Debbie.
The purple is Laid Back Lilac.
Laid Back Lilac.
This green is the Polished Jade.
Polished Jade, yeah.
And this one is the Campso Teal. I don't know, Delusions have a couple colours that are quite similar.
Yes, but yet so different.
So there we go. You can see, because basically the pink and the purple are almost dry, we're not getting too much mixing. And if I was just taking my time to come and fill it. And again, you don't need to necessarily fill it solidly. If you don't want to just have a little bit and leave some white, you can certainly do that as well.
And Kathy's giving us another great tip and saying, go to a few businesses and ask for last year's diaries that they give out at Christmas. Most have leftovers. Example, Reese Plumbing. Oh, well, you never know. Thank you, Kathy, for that tip. And Debbie, you're most welcome for the names of those paints. No problem at all, Deb.
Okay, and just hopefully not casting too much caution to the wind, I'm going to add a little bit of this squeezed orange.
Ooh, gorgeous.
Just a little bit through here.
I was so hesitant to use orange until art journaling came into my life. And now it's one of my go-to colours.
Yeah. Now, this is where it can get a little bit scary, and you sort of get to a point where you think, oh my goodness, what have I done? Now, this sort of mixed media goes through what we like to call the gangly teenage stage.
Yes.
So there's going to get to a bit where we still kind of love bits of it maybe, but we know we just need to keep going. So just like Dory keeps swimming, we need to keep going. Okay, so step number 1, we've got our ephemera down. Step number 2, we've added some paint. I'm going to grab another journal and we'll jump into steps 3 and 4.
Yep, awesome. So as you can see, Michelle was not hesitant in using those colours. She didn't overthink it. She just went for it. And we know it's going to look good in the end. And so she's got next step coming up in just one moment as she moves her journal over.
Okay, so this one I've already added the ephemera and I've already added some paint, and this paint's fairly dry. Now we're just going to add a little bit of interest with some stenciling. Now this could be using bubble wrap or whatever stencil you've got, just adding that little bit of contrast. Now what I want to do, again I probably needed a paint palette, but not to worry.
Are you all right, Michelle?
Yeah, we'll come up with something. So using a really dry brush, and again, stenciling, just using it quite lightly. This is where less really is more. Just really subtly adding a little bit of shape in there. We can see there's probably a little bit too much paint there, but that one's okay. And then if we wanted to perhaps add some more of the orange, which was an orange brush. And again, this is where it's good to use your more opaque or less see-through paints, because this then sort of sits on top a little bit more.
Because you don't want to completely cover up all your layers that you work so hard on. You want them to show just a smidge or just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And if you have trouble holding the stencil down, you could always use some low-tack tape to hold it in place. And again, we're not trying to use the whole stencil.
No.
We're just using small bits of it. And again, we can sort of lift that up, give it a bit of a peek.
Gorgeous.
Oh yeah, maybe something a little bit more here and there.
Yeah.
So really gently sitting that down.
And Jennifer says that's her favourite stencil. I think it's ours too, Jennifer.
Yes, this is the darkroom door stencil, and it's called Circles, I think, and it's the large one. It comes in the 8x4 and a small
Comes
size.
in a smaller size too, I think, Michelle.
Exactly. So there we go. Hopefully you can see that. So we can see we've added same colours with just one little bit of a contrasting colour.
Yes.
And just so we can still see the text underneath.
Yep.
We can still see the overall colours, and then we've got this in place.
Beautiful.
So, okay. So layer 1 was ephemera.
Yes.
Layer 2 was the paint.
Yes.
Layer 3 was some stenciling. So layer 4, we're going to add a focal point.
Wonderful. Margaret, Michelle is using Dina Wakley brushes, or the white set that she's using, and I think she has some in her store.
Yes.
As well. So they're the Dina Wakley, and we all love them.
Yeah, we love them because they're quite a stiff brush, so they're great for stenciling as well. Alternatively, you can use brushes, sponges for stenciling as well.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to use my lovely Art by Marlene book to find something that was sort of got purples and pinks. So let's have a look at what we might find. Oh, okay. We're not going to be able to finish this today because I'm going to have to let it dry. But I really love. Can we see that?
Yes.
So these are all printed and ready to just press out.
I'm sure you could post the finished page onto our show notes when you're done, Michelle, which is not a gorgeous.
Good thinking. Because yes, I'm going to sort of stick with the purple. So I've got a lovely little layer.
Oh, what a shame you're sticking with the purple.
Sticking with purple. But as we find, once we pop it on, it's going to get a little bit lost. So there's techniques that we can use for that.
Yes.
So when we think about our focal points, we want to bring in a little bit of composition theory. Again, completely optional. But what we want to consider is if we divided our page into thirds, we've got these points, we call them sort of those focal points. So we might want to look at, and also you can addition the pieces as well. So it's like, oh, do I like it there? Maybe I could draw a body here, or maybe that makes sense here or here. And what sort of story do we want it to tell? So I think I actually like it there. What do you think, Wendy?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, there.
You think it
there.
works
I
there?
think there, because then it looks like she's got a dress on underneath it, even though I'm looking at it, we're looking at it upside down just at the moment.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No.
Again, that's another one of our little technical difficulties we didn't quite overcome. So again, going back to my ephemera, just putting that little bit down. I'm just going to put some onto her plait as well, because that's going to be a little bit harder to line up.
So Michelle, Julie's asking, when you don't clean your stencils, do you find the colour transfers the next time it is used? Well, I actually don't, because the colour is usually dry on there, and even if a little bit came off, I'm not really bothered if it does come on.
Before I ran a store and did craft shows, I definitely would give my stencil a wipe down with a baby wipe.
Yes.
Now I just wait until it has so much paint, because the acrylic paint is basically a thin layer of plastic. So after a while, it actually creates a layer enough to pull off and sort of lift off. So, okay. So step 4, are we up to? We've added our focal point. So let me turn that around.
And I mean, with your stencils, you can always, once every couple of weeks, dump them in some soapy dishwashing liquid and give them a light scrub with a brush or a scrubber or a sponge if you need to. But and if you use a paste on a stencil of any kind, definitely baby wipe it straight away, because that will definitely stick to your stencil.
Okay, so now before we go on to the next step, we want this to completely dry. So we'll use a separate page as a demonstration. But so our very first step, we added our ephemera, we then added our paint, we've then got our stencils, and then we've got our focal point. So we're starting to tell a story, sort of starting to bring this together. And so like we said, we might draw a body in here, or we might find one to cut out, or we might use a stamp, we might add some more writing in here. But what we'll do now is find one that's dry and show you what we need to do next.
Thank you, Michelle. And as you can see, it really doesn't take a long time to create a journal page or an art journal spread. So, have a go.
Okay, so this is one that I was working on over the last few weeks. So it's nice and dry now. So what I want to do is, you can see that I've already added a word here. There's lots of different ways of adding words into our art journals.
Gorgeous.
We can use stamps, we can use rice paper, but here I've just done it by hand, and I normally do because I'm usually in a hurry. And then what I've done here is to help lift the image off the background is use a water-soluble pen just to go, pencil,
Gorgeous.
to go around the outside, and you can see how that creates a border. Now it's sort of one of those things where when you know what you're looking at, it could look a little bit dark, but if you're just looking at it as an overall composition, it really helps.
It really lifts it, Michelle. Absolutely.
It helps lift the image out. So what I want to do now is use some of my, so I've got fine liners and I've got scribble sticks. So for scribble sticks, we might want to add a little bit more. She's got a little bit of blue in her hair, and I've already used some pencil to enhance that. So what we want to do is find a colour or maybe a little bit more green. So each of these scribble stick sets have 12 pieces in them, and they're all the beautiful colours that come with them. And these are water-soluble crayons. So what we can do is, might be a little bit subtle, a little bit hard to see, so we can sort of see something here. Just go over and sort of enhance that.
No, we
so
can see that, Michelle.
That.
Perfect.
And then what we want to do is just wet our paintbrush just slightly, and then just feather it out a little bit so it's not quite as solid. So see how subtle that can be?
Absolutely.
And then again, we can just use it to build up layers. So we might want to come here, and this is the ephemera, had the circles in the background, again some Art by Marlene paper. And then just use it to add those colours in, build those colours up. So once that's dry, we can then use, like we said, our fine line markers or our beautiful food ball pens to add some more detail in. So this is a great set of fine liners, again, for using through your stencils or for just adding some little detail. So I'll turn this back around the right way. And so one of the things we love doing in art journaling is, I think it's got a proper name, but like scribbly writing. So if I wanted to write something that you can't really read.
Yes, it's called something, a
Scribillum?
I don't know, I'm going to say this wrong. But anyway,
so I'm
you know
to
what we
write,
mean.
Yeah, today.
Writing where you really can't understand what you've written, but no one else can read it. So.
We are on Plan C with Wendy and Michelle. So again, using that blue that I've already got in the background and just enhancing it a little bit.
Yes.
With some of that scribbly writing. I might then grab a red one so I can see we've already got some red featured here. So we might use it to re-emphasize this circle pattern, to highlight this heart a little bit more. So don't be afraid to go over your images because we're making it our own. We don't need to just use what we've been given. We can really use that to enhance what we've got. And then use it a bit on the flowers. And we really then want to start looking at composition. So how does the red sort of balance out across the area?
That is looking so good, Michelle. Absolutely.
Excellent.
So Pat is asking, can glitter be used here? I've not used glitter in my art journal. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that because I just know it will go everywhere.
Yeah. Yep, of course you can. If you want to use glitter, you'd want to add, again, if it's Kinder Glitz, you can certainly put that on the top, but then of course you'd want to leave it open to completely dry. Yeah. Or if it was something that needed a glue with it, then yeah, you could certainly put a little bit of glue in the heart and put some glitter on. I'm just not a glitter person.
Yeah,
so-
no, not me either. So, Pat's asking, are the markers water-based, please, or alcohol? I'm sorry, I can't see from here.
Yeah, no,
Michelle?
these are just fine liners, so
Yeah.
they're not water based at all. But
Yep.
they don't seem to smudge from what I've had. So they
Okay, yeah.
Can we focus
Yeah.
on that?
Whereas
Just
the
so
scribble
they're quite
sticks
fine
definitely are meant to be used with
Yes,
water.
yep.
So, yes,
Scribble
just
sticks
so
are water soluble. Yeah, you could certainly use alcohol markers. Again, you want to be conscious that sometimes they do bleed through a little
yes.
bit. I think this was an alcohol marker just for the
Sure.
bloom bit
Okay,
there.
yeah.
Something similar. So again, I'm just grabbing this to just look at little bits to highlight. Not overthinking it too much.
No, don't.
But not really adding anything else at the moment. When you get to the point where you think, oh, maybe I could, that may be
That may
the
be the time
place
to
to
stop. Okay.
And that probably is a really good point. So
Yeah.
Wendy, how do you know if you've finished? So I think you get to a point where you you're bringing the colours in together. You're not adding anything extra. As
Yes.
soon as you're ready to sort of add something else, then that might be the place to
Yeah.
stop.
And I think, Michelle, you've suggested in the past to stand up and look at your work, walk away for a little while, come back and look at it. And if you're really unsure, maybe just let it dry overnight and come back to it the next day. And I think your piece will speak to you and tell you, I think I'm done kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
And Michelle, when you're finished, what do you suggest we do when we're finished?
So when we're finished, I think we're close to finished here.
Yeah.
What we want to do is sign our work.
Yes.
And my rule of thumb, as Wendy knows, is that once I've signed something, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't add anything else. So
And Michelle, do you date it at all?
I just pop my initials here and I'll write just Feb 21.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So just usually somewhere towards
That looks absolutely
the
fantastic,
spine.
Michelle.
So it's quite subtle, but I know that I finished it. I've signed it. I've given this a little bit of a border already to help draw our eye in.
Yep.
And I'm happy with it. I think it's done.
I think it's done, and it's time for you to come and sit back down, I think.
Excellent. So let's just recap. So for art
Perfect.
journaling, like we said, you need a journal to get started, whether that's one that's pre-made or one that you've made yourself. We want perhaps some gesso, but if you don't have any, that's okay. We want a really good adhesive, so some sort of a gel medium or
Yes.
PVA, or it could be Aquadia, but like we said, we don't want Mod Podge because that's a bit dangerous. We then need some paint. So usually we stick with acrylic paint. You can use watercolours, but
Yep.
sometimes those colours aren't quite as vibrant. They just,
Okay, yep.
again, they act differently, so get to know what you've
Yes,
got.
yes.
You want some paint brushes to help apply the paint. You need a stencil.
Perfect.
And then if we're going to do any stamping, we didn't do any today, but you want something that's waterproof. So as you build your
Definitely.
layers up, they won't fade. I think that's it.
I think you're good.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I think that
I'll
was
head
a
back.
wonderful introduction to how you can go about art journaling. Michelle's 5, fundamental guideline steps, and we can keep going. So Michelle's going to come back and join us in just one moment, and we're going to swap the camera around.
Oh.
So here we are, and I'm just going to show one
please
piece
do.
quickly. So this was my latest. Oh, where am I going? This was my latest art journal piece that I did. So once again, used my layers, used my stencils, used a focal point, used some words. So I kept it really simple. Added some washi tape, but just had a lot of fun. So it's anything you want to do, and you can do it and just have some fun.
Yeah, and the great thing about art journaling is that, particularly when you do it in a class, it's amazing when you look at people doing those same steps with similar materials and just ending up with really, really different results.
And no 2 pages ever look the same, right?
Mhm.
As we can vouch for, we've done the same thing, that use the same products, and nothing looks the same.
Yeah.
So I know there were a couple of questions for Michelle
Mhm.
in the feed later, but she will go back and answer them.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been wonderful, Michelle.
It is.
Absolutely
Now
fantastic.
we've got Mixed Media Art has a special offer for all of
Yes.
our viewers. So if you would like to get started in art journaling or get yourself back into it, the Mixed Media Art Studio page, and we'll make sure we pop a
Yeah,
link
absolutely.
with this video. We've got 20% off our art journals
Wow.
between now until the 26th of February. So you need to pop in the code PLANCAJ, and again we'll pop that in the
pop that in.
comments. So all capitals PLANCAJ into the checkout, and that'll give you 20% off your art journal.
Wonderful.
So whether you want a small Delusions one or
Yep.
a big one or a Scrap FX junk journal kit, pop that into the checkout, and that gives you a chance to really get a great discount and getting started in art
Yeah.
journaling.
And when is that special till, please,
Yep,
Michelle?
until Friday the 26th of February. worry.
So you've got a week, people. You've been warned. This is your time. If you want, even if you're a experienced art journaler and you think you're coming to the end of some of your journals, grab them now, because 20% is just wonderful, and always great to support local suppliers, local small business. So, Michelle is very generous to all of us. So this is your time. Get those journals happening.
And of course, you don't just need one. You need a couple of journals to be working on at any one time.
Absolutely.
And so, like you said, it might be a sketchbook. It might then be one or two that you add pages in.
For sure.
It might be one that you keep notes in of what paints you've used, or what of your inks matches with your paint. So it's really good to have all that documented as well.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle, it's been absolutely lovely having you as a guest on our show. And, we did have a few little, is this going to work today with our technical setup? But, the internet gods were kind to us. So we just want to thank you all for joining us. It's been incredible. We have some amazing guests lined up for you over the next few weeks. So please join us. Fridays at 2:00. We will be here.
Exactly. And for all the information, you know what to do. Head over to our website from picture2pageandbeyond.com.au and click on the Plan C logo, and that'll let you know who's coming up.
Yes.
It's going to be the place to catch the replays. It'll be where the show notes are when our website person gets herself organised.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Don't worry. And please make sure you've signed up for the newsletter as well on the website, because that's what's going to give you all the information about what's coming up, what Michelle is up to next, what I'm up to next with Plan C. So, we would love you to be there. We don't want you to miss out on anything. So whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on replay, we really appreciate you being there. So please drop us a comment, say hello, and let us know. And if there's any guests you think, you would like to see on the show, please drop us a message as well, because we'd love to see if we can make that happen for you.
Yep. Excellent. So I hope you have a chance to get creating today, whether it's just something as simple as a card or a stamp or some colouring in, or maybe you're ready to delve into the world of art journaling.
Yes, absolutely. So, Michelle, it's been an incredible show. I have loved being your co-host again, and I look forward to Plan C episode 3 next Friday.
Excellent. So this is Michelle and Wendy signing off. We hope you have a crafty day.
Bye.